Today we delve into a beautiful story of faith, intrigue, and the search for something far greater than ourselves. It is Epiphany. Epiphany Sunday. Epiphany is a major feast day in the Christian calendar that falls on January 6th every year. It's 12 days after Christmas. It's also known as Three Kings Day or the Feast of the Epiphany. In some Christian traditions, it can also mark the end of the Christmas season. Epiphany celebrates the manifestation of Jesus as the Son of God and the arrival of the Magi, or the wise men, who came to honor and worship this newborn king. After all of the hoopla of Christmas festivities, it is pretty easy for most of us to just let Epiphany slip by. But the root of this ancient story carries deep and meaningful guidance and a reminder of how vast God's love is. Epiphany is a continuation of the Christmas story. It is a celebration of how God reveals Jesus to the Gentiles, represented by the Magi. Perhaps its greatest significance is that we see clearly from day one, Jesus is not just the Savior of the Jews, but of all people. The Magi's gift of gold, frankincense, and myrrh point Jesus' identity and purpose. Gold represents his kingship. Frankincense symbolizes his divinity, and myrrh foreshadows his death and sacrifice. As we embark on this journey alongside the three wise men, we often think of them as kings or wise men, but it is extremely significant to realize they are foreigners above everything else. Yes, they are learned men, they are astrologers and seekers of wisdom. But they are clearly not Jews. And yet God guides them for months by a star that enthralls, that enraptures their hearts, fueling a deep curiosity that leads them on an arduous quest, leaving behind the familiar and venturing into the unknown, looking for the deepest meaning of life. Now maybe you're thinking to yourself, that's a great story, but what's it got to do with me? Well, similarly, every one of us is on a quest of sorts, seeking something beyond the material accoutrements of life. We long for deep meaning and connection with God and others. The star that guided the Magi symbolizes the guiding light of our own lives, the voice of God, the light of Christ, the life of Jesus, guiding and directing us into a life of loving and caring for God and others. And in this story, we see in Herod some of the worst of our own human nature. We see the destructive consequences of lives driven by ego, fear, and the thirst for power. And when the Magi arrive in Jerusalem, they met Herod, who is really at the other end of the spectrum from the Magi. If they are wise and seeking truth, Herod is consumed with maintaining his grip on power, and he represents all that opposes the transformative power of faith. Herod is scared to death of this potential birth of a Messiah, because this could potentially undermine his power and his authority. Now, before we're too harsh on Herod, we have to look ourselves in the mirror and ask, how afraid are we of change? How often do we cling to the familiar and want to hold on to our place? Change is scary. And isn't it true that we often resist change and cling to the familiar, mostly out of fear? Do we ever hold on to our own ways, our station in life, our fears, without asking what is best, not just for me and those in my circle, but what is best for the greater good of all? Faith like the Magi exhibit demands courage. It necessitates the humbling acknowledgement that there is something greater than ourselves. To embark on a journey of faith requires us to leave behind the familiar and embrace the unknown with a willingness to go beyond what is comfortable or expected. Now, the Magi arrived in Jerusalem, and they inquired about the newborn king, and their presence stirred fear in Herod, who was the ruling king in that region. Herod's discomfort and fear emphasizes what happens when God's revelation interrupts the status quo. But the Magi refused to be intimidated, deterred by Herod's fear. No, they courageously clung to their greater purpose, to their quest. What a powerful lesson for you and I, for all of us, to persevere and remain steadfast on our journey as followers of the light of the world, even when we face resistance. Now, as the Magi knelt before Jesus and presented their gifts, we too are invited to do the same. We're called to offer the precious gifts of our hearts, our talents, our time, and our resources as expressions of our love and commitment to Jesus through serving and loving others. And just as the Magi proclaimed the kingship of Jesus, we're called to proclaim this same thing, but not just in word alone on Sundays, but by living out that transformative love of God every day. The love given to us and the world in the gift of this Christ child. Epiphany reassures us that we are all called and that we are all welcome in the presence of the Lord. In these times of uncertainty and division, it is incumbent upon us to be seekers of truth, to be bearers of love, and to be agents of justice. It's so critical for us to look beyond the superficial and dare to go wherever the Spirit of God leads us. And I guarantee you that it will lead us into some very unexpected places. But fear not, because Emmanuel, God, is always with us. Faith, as I said earlier, is not just a destination, but it is a journey. It is ultria, the Latin word Jeannie and I encountered and embraced on our Camino de Santiago pilgrimage. Meaning to go beyond the expected, to go beyond the routine, to go to the unexpected places, to shine the light of love and grace. In order to do this, we have to realize a few important things about this journey. Sometimes I'm asked when people find out that I'm a Christian, or even more specifically, they find out that I'm a pastor, they want to throw out to me their litmus test. Either to find out if I'm in their camp or their tribe as a Christian, or if they're not Christians, they want to see if I'm actually a lover of God and people or just a lover of my religion. Christianity can be confusing, but the path Jesus sets before us is pretty clear and direct. You know what it is, to love God and to love others. So what's that look like when we've lost track of how to have even meaningful dialogue with people who don't look like us or talk like us or believe like us? How many times do we find the fuel for conversation is more reactive, even combative, rather than a desire to listen and grow in our understanding of another person? Think of Herod here, who's only seeking to serve his own self-interest. How can maybe we press the reset button? Well, let's begin with, how do we shine this light of God's love onto others? An alcoholic friend of Philip Yancey once said to him, "When I'm late to church, people turn around and stare at me with frowns of disapproval. I get the clear message that I'm not as responsible as they are. When I'm late to an AA meeting, the meeting comes to a halt and everyone jumps up to hug and welcome me. They realize that my lateness may be a sign that I almost didn't make it. When I show up, it proves that my desperate need for them won out over my desperate need for alcohol." Let's make sure that people know how welcome they are as we shine our light on them. That our table is really big and that there is always truly a place with their name on it at our table. It is pretty undeniable that each of us longs for places that are safe, sanctuaries, where our bodies, minds, and souls can be restored. As many of you know, Jeannie and I love to walk almost every day, so it's no surprise that Ram Dass, a psychologist's take on life, resonated with me as a great reminder that we are all just walking each other home. We're not all alike. We don't all see the world in the same way. We don't all agree on every topic. But we are all siblings, brothers and sisters, and we are created by God in God's image. So I suggest that this epiphany is a good moment for our own personal epiphanies in our lives. An aha moment of sorts where we take some time to rethink how we see relationships. As it seems that we've lost confidence, maybe in our ability to love those who are different. Think about this. Jesus doesn't say, love those you agree with, love those you like, love those who look like you and act like you. No, he says, love one another. Yes, even them. Because remember, we're all just walking each other home. In other words, we don't have to agree with everyone or everything to love other people. Disagreement and belonging are not mutually exclusive, and they can coexist in our relationships with each other. Maybe that's one of the very unexpected places that the Spirit of God is leading us together. Wouldn't that be awesome? I recently read about a place called Corrymeela. It's a community in Northern Ireland that is committed to working towards the healing of the hatred and division between Irish Catholics and Protestants, a division that has existed for decades. What could we learn from that in our own personal lives, in our community, and in our nation? What might it look like to enter into disagreement from a place of trust rather than fear, from a place of love rather than hatred? How scary and strange and meaningful could this be? If disagreement was a disqualifier, the Magi would never have been given the star to follow. Their gifts would never have been given or received simply on the basis that they weren't Jewish. But we see in this important biblical narrative that the love and grace and goodness of God is not reserved for a few who are on the right team or in the right tribe. This important story reveals to all the world that this love, this grace, this goodness of God is offered to all people. And a good starting place for us is to realize that disagreement and differences are not disqualifiers. Epiphany is about shining the light and the light of Christ into the shadows and the dark and broken places of people's lives, all people. Now, shining and being the light, that's figurative speech, which sometimes can leave us without really grasping the real life practical implications. So maybe today, as we think about our own epiphanies, could come from this phrase, working to heal. Maybe that can help us more fully grasp our mission and our purpose in following the way of Jesus. I ran across a Jewish phrase that can help us here. Tikkun olam, literally repair of the world. My wife Jeannie loves to work in the garden. Having her hands in the soil nourishes her soul. And one thing Jeannie often tells me is how important the dirt is. How we have to make sure that it is nutrient rich in order for the plants to thrive. A few years back, we had some potted plants that just would not grow or thrive. And what we came to discover was that the soil that they were rooted in was toxic because the nutrients had been leached out. The plants needed nutrients. Tikkun, to repair the soil of relationships. To repair the soul of a wounded world, we must feed the toxic soil with healthy nutrients. With the nutrients of kindness, of generosity, with the capacity to accommodate people's fragility. And to do this all with a gentleness of spirit. Working to heal is in our DNA. Christmas, Epiphany, Easter, they're all about a God who wants to heal his wounded and hurting creation and children. That means as people created in the image of God, it's actually in our DNA to be healers. We are, as Henry Nouwen wrote, wounded healers. And it is in that woundedness that we may find our deepest levels of empathy and compassion for others as we live out the work of healing. In kindness, we affirm dignity. In empathy, we see value and build connections. With compassion and justice, we right wrongs and create safe places for people to be healed and thrive. Archbishop Desmond Tutu offers the understanding of who we are. We are made for goodness. We are made for love. We are made for friendliness. We're made for togetherness. We are made for all of the beautiful things that you and I know. We are made to tell the world that there are no outsiders. All are welcome. Black, white, red, yellow, rich, poor, educated, not educated, male, female, gay, straight, all. We all belong to this family, this human family, God's family. This table is really big, and you are welcome here. Let us join together to be healed and to heal, to love and to be loved. Please join me in this New Year's prayer. As the dawn of the new year breaks, let us give thanks for all we hold dear: our health, our family, and our friends. Let us release our grudges, our anger, and our pains, for these are nothing but binding chains. Let us live each day in the most loving ways, the God-conscious way. Let us serve all who are in need, regardless of race, color, or creed. Let us keep God of our own understanding in our hearts, and chant God's name each day to the world. Let us lead the world from darkness to light, from falsehood to truth, and from wrong to right. Let us remember that we are all one, embracing all, discriminating against none. May our year be filled with peace, prosperity, and love. And may God's blessings shower upon each of us and bestow on each of us a bright, healthy, and peaceful year to come. And all God's children say, amen.